We are in playoff mode with the death lineup. We're going to talk about this Week 18 game, which was not much. It was a glorified preseason game. And if you watched the end of that second half and you watched all the way through, I commend you. Thankfully, I got to watch the second half with my clicker, with my fast forward button, because I had to get out of Dodge for a little bit. The kids had a couple basketball games. But man, like that was a rough second half and very comparable to a preseason game, I thought, with Sam Darnold running for his life, wide receivers dropping balls for big plays. And I don't know how many quarterback draws we saw from Carson Wentz. Jeez, like throw the ball for once, guy.
I worked until like 3. So then I came in late and watched. And I tell you what, man, watching it with the clicker, man, I got through that game in an hour. That was awesome. So that's kind of the benefit of not going right after the game, that I could kind of watch. And this game wasn't, it was what it was. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time analyzing. I just kind of watched. Just watched it. There were a couple things I took away, and we'll get into those as we go through. But yeah, like you say, it was really a scrimmage, and the only thing missing was the running clock.
Yeah, absolutely. So the basketball games the Twins played, there was a running clock, which I was very thankful for. But I don't know what the time is. It's like maybe when there's 2 minutes left in each quarter, then they stop the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So the second game went into overtime.
Oh wow!
A kid on the other team hit a 3 right at the buzzer to send it to overtime, and
Jokic.
I was talking. Yeah, oh my god, it wasn't that lucky. I love how Jokic just like, yep, I knew I was gonna bank that one. Come on, dude. I was talking to my wife as the last play. There was I think there was maybe 5 or 6 seconds left in the game, and the other team had the ball, and our coach called a timeout. I looked at my wife and I was like, wait, why is he calling a timeout? He just allowed the coach to call a play, an inbounds play to get the last shot off. And it worked, because then they hit the 3, and the coach, I think the coach, they've had some success against the teams that are comparable to them, but against the teams that are better than them, not great success. So I think he was just so excited that they were actually in the lead. And he just so desperately wanted the W. He was like overcoaching a little bit, probably a little nervous, but these kids are 13 and 14. So it was just funny to me, because I did that. That was 20 years ago for me, and so I'm like, I'm just watching now. I don't need to do that. Like, I don't need to get anxious and go crazy, but so I like it being on the sideline, and I watch the kids. But yeah, so that running clock is very helpful in that kind of game. And I think it felt like the first half was a running clock, because that first half went by so quick.
It really did.
And then the second half was a little bit longer. But let's start with, and we'll get through the game first. And then I really want to talk playoffs. I think the playoff scenario was so crazy today. I think the thing that I'm most frustrated about, and I wasn't really mad about them losing. The thing was, Sam Darnold had an opportunity to make 300K today, and they took that opportunity away from him. If he had 25% of the snaps and they won, then he was going to get a $300,000 bonus. I think that was his bonus for every single game this season. But obviously, with Brock playing every single game, Sam didn't really get a chance. So this was his opportunity to make a little coin, and they didn't allow it. And so my co-host on Thompson and Clark, Brad, he is a Rams fan. So we have, whenever the Niners and the Rams play each other, we have a little fun, back and forth on the baseball podcast. And so he was saying, and I think we felt the same way, because they were already going to make the playoffs. It was just whether it was going to be 6th or 7th seed. And he said, I clenched my cheeks on every tackle because I wanted to see both teams duck out of there with no injuries heading into the playoffs. And that's absolutely how I felt. I was like, man, Bosa's still rushing on 3rd down. Like, what's going on? But then you think about it. And this is not like baseball. This is not like September baseball or how September baseball used to be. We just call up a bunch of dudes to fill out the roster. Like they had to play with basically their same roster.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were some guys like Debo, like
I say the dumbest thing ever that we played 18 weeks and it's still game day 53.
yeah,
Just by math, you can't, you're going to just mathematically, you can't put in you don't have enough guys to just not play everybody. So guys,
Peace Squad should just be available, I think.
right. I mean, that you at least in the last couple weeks, you should be able to just expand. Okay, you don't have to do it for the whole season, but if you like, I think that would be a great idea. Is
Mm-hmm.
the practice squad is like 15 guys. The last 2 weeks, they should all be available.
Yeah.
So you expand the roster. And I mean, I guess theoretically you do have to pay them more. I guess you would
that
have
is probably the thing for the
yeah,
teams.
you'd have to pay them like regular game checks. You couldn't, because that would stink that if you're playing them, but you're still just paying them whatever the $1,500
Yeah.
for the week is. So yeah, that's probably the hang up, is that they don't want to give those 15 guys whatever the minimum game check is. NFL owners are so cheap. I mean, it's ridiculous that and I think I was talking to somebody the other day about this. I think hopefully as these old guard owners move on, the ones whose net worth is exactly the value of their team, I think these little piddly expenses. Okay, another one of my big pet peeves is you could just the whole officiating thing needs to be overhauled. Those dudes need to be full-time.
Yeah.
You need to have replay officials on site in every game. It could be done, but I think that once you start to cycle in new money and these guys that are like legitimately billionaires, the added expense is not, I think it can be justified in the quality of the game. Making the refs better, it can do nothing but help. And I think as we move forward and these gaming relationships grow, I think they're going to put pressure on them to overhaul that. And another thing could be, playing these practice squad players. I mean, the roster should be increased just in general, but
they got that extra week of TV money. They expanded the playoffs to get the extra game on each side, or however that works. Maybe I think so. I think they added a game, so it's not like the owners are hurting, because the players are bargaining better than they are. The owners run this league. Like the players, comparable to the NBA and Major League Baseball, the players don't even have a comparable voice in this league. And how's this for, Mark Cuban? He sells the Mavericks to some crazy rich people, and he wants to bonus $35 million spread around for some employees that have been there for a while. Like that's kind of what you're talking about is, the newer ownership. And, I don't know how much he paid for the Mavs, probably $100 million or something like that. And he gets to cash out at $4 billion. Like, of course he can do it, but you got the NFL owners don't see things that way. And it's like, man, let's invest a little bit in the future of this league because it is so hot right now. And the other thing is that when it comes to, what was it's not like you have to rely on Wall Street, right? Like if you're Netflix and you're like, okay, we have to keep our costs down. So thus, we got to fire all these people, even though we're making money hand over fist. This is what Wall Street wants. This is how we're going to make our stakeholders happy. The NFL doesn't have anybody like
Mm-mm.
that. They just have
The
owners.
stakeholders are just the owners. I
They're
mean,
just the
that's
owners.
really all it is. So yeah, it's ridiculous that they don't make those simple reinvestments in the game. It looks like we're gonna get yet another for the third straight year. It's like going to add another international game. So I mean, the money is raking it in, and Raj, to his credit, uh, he doesn't seem to be able to make a misstep in terms of growing the revenue, and it looks like he's gonna get to his 25 by 2027. So I mean, 25 billion a year in revenue, which is a staggering amount. So it's not like they don't have the resources to make the experience, to do the best they can to make the experience as best as possible. And I know there are people who have made that argument, the counter argument that, the baseball refs, I mean, the baseball umpires are full time and they stink. Well, I mean, okay,
They're gonna get replaced in 10 years anyways.
but again, I still don't think that is an argument that you would. And again, I know theoretically, you just based on the length of the season, they can't be part-time employees because it's it's half the year. So that I get that part, but I just think that it's just like a glaring thing that you can. I feel very strongly about the fact that those dudes should be doing workshops year round. They should be working out year round. There should be another one for me, is there should be an NFL official at every station in training camp officiating every single drill and every single team session. Because again, as I've said many times, there's nothing I found in life that doesn't improve if you rep it. So just looking at these things and looking and having game tape to go back and study above and beyond, because I mean that's all training camp is those
Yeah.
that's a bunch of tape that they can go and they can study and they can break down and they can improve technique. The refs they can use that too. It would be I can't you can't give me an argument why that wouldn't be beneficial for them. And even if it just improves one call a game, I mean, I think across the league, that's huge. Because I mean, we shit on the refs, but by and large, they make way more calls than they miss. It just seems like the ones that they miss are really, really magnified.
The rules also change a lot towards the offense in seemingly every year.
Yeah. So I mean, again, being on top of it, it just seems to me a no-brainer that to be as sharp as you can, you don't have to be worried about going out and selling insurance 6 months out of the I mean, it would be
you also have the UFL, right? If you wanted to create a more of a referee camp or minor league system or something, I know the UFL right now is only 8 teams. I believe it's only 8 teams, but if they do expand, and the NFL should invest in these guys. Fox has a piece of this league. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his wife, and I forget the firm that invests their Red Rock, something like that. There's money in it, and I don't understand why the NFL doesn't sort of utilize it in the way that they could.
Like baseball does. I mean, to have a minor league feeder system, because let's be completely honest. The UFL or whatever the hell it's called is not competition. I mean,
no, not at all.
It's just not. So, I mean, why not utilize it to your benefit? And again, you can. I would think it would make sense to do it like a G League where there are affiliates and the teams can use those teams as, or I mean, the perfect example to me is the way they run things between Golden State and Santa Cruz. I mean, it's
You think Joe Lacob might be interested in buying a UFL team if they kind of had a little bit of NFL backing, and it was like it's like, you own a UFL team and we get one of these other NFL teams up for sale. Well, guess who,
Right.
kind of is in communication.
Like again, like just like with the players, that could be a feeder system. If you see guys that are owning those teams and they're doing really innovative and good work, I mean that it would seem like a no brainer that those would be the first people. I mean, not to say that that's a guarantee, but those would be the first people you would look at when it came time for expansion, or if it came time somebody gets Jerry Richardson and they gotta get out. You know, you can look to those teams as potential buyers if they meet the financial requirements. Which at anymore, all of these guys are billionaires when they to be. I would imagine even to be if the NFL were to ever to get involved in the UFL, then those franchise fees would skyrocket,
Yeah.
and you would have to be, you know, somebody of substantial means, like Tepper, who can come in and just pay $2 billion cash. I mean, which is mind blowing. It's mind blowing that my man could just say, "Hey, where you want me to wire this money? I don't even gotta, no financing, no. I just, I
Yeah.
got it. I
Yeah.
got it. I got 2 billion."
And look, the Raj, his best trait. Now I know, he's lawyer, and I'm sure there's aspects of his job that, are fairly strategic, and we don't work for ESPN, so we can't get suspended like Bill Simmons did when he
Mhm.
said, he wanted Raj to have a little testicular fortitude. Um, I, his skill set is catering to the filthy rich white people. That is his
Mhm.
skill set.
Mhm.
And understanding what they want and what they need for this league to keep running, and connect the partnerships and such with these big giant media companies and these sponsorships. So, that is not a, I'm sure he wouldn't, if he didn't have this skill set, he's not, solving problematic world issues like in
Mhm.
but that's just what he does. He is able to keep that job because the owners like him. The owners want him there, which I like. To me, if the owners are that gung ho for him, I'd be kind of bothered if I was the players.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's how it works. But just the players don't have the power. But anyways, that tells you how nothing this game was that we did the first 15 minutes of the show on Roger Goodell and the way that the league is kind of running the 18-week schedule and such. But if you had it, like, I don't think there's any main takeaways, except for me. It is that the Niners are very, very top heavy with star power. And when that happens in today's NFL, the back end of that roster is very, very weak. And you saw that with the offensive line once they took some of the starters out, and
Oof.
Sam Darnold was running for his life. There was a couple times where I thought he was like going to get destroyed because of he's trying to find guys and he's trying to hang in that pocket, and he hung in until the very last second. I think that's probably most teams in the NFL today, and that's kind of how you have to do it. Is you pay top dollar for the really, really good players, and then you try and spread the money around the most possible positions in your second and third stringers. But that, we already know that the offensive line is probably the weak spot on the 49ers team. But man, like, just the discrepancy even between first string offensive line and second string offensive line was so wide.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. The only real revelation to me, I thought Robert Beal looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um. He that was a big takeaway for me, and then I haven't heard, but um, Farrell would be a sneaky loss if he can't play. I mean, because he's been solid. Not so much in pass rush, but he's been a solid rotational piece in the run game and whatnot. So that would be a loss if he's not, able to go in 2 weeks. But and I would think Beal would probably slot in there if that were the case. But yeah, that was it really. As far as takeaway,
Barrows reported, I don't know, probably about an hour after the game was over, that Shanahan said that Farrell will have tests Monday to get a prognosis on his injury, but that it's not an MCL or an ACL.
well,
Farrell said the knee just felt off, and the Niners opted to shut him down. And I guess Taylor Hawkins also had a wrist injury late in the game. But Farrell originally said that he was pretty optimistic at playing. He didn't have a limp, and that he had left the game largely as a precaution. So I'm going to guess that because it's the playoffs, like he'll be ready to go. The one that I'm still really worried about is Armstead, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's hopefully, like I say, come playoff time, come 2 weeks from now, it'll have been what 6 or 7 weeks since he's played. That's damn near half the season. So
yeah,
hopefully, I mean, if he still can't go, then that like you say, it's already a cause for concern. But at what point do you start thinking that it just might not happen? So which is again, it's just a huge loss. And as we continue to move forward, their teams, especially, if we see the Ravens again, if we see a team that I just worry about is Detroit with their interior, especially, and the way they can run the ball. Hopefully, the Rams can do us a favor and go there next week and upset them. And
that's going to be a fun game just for the
yeah,
storylines.
yep, absolutely.
So I was talking to Brad earlier today, and he said he kind of wanted to avoid the Lions just because he knows that the narrative is going to be all about McVay and Goff, and he's like, gosh, I don't want to hear all that stuff again. And the flip side would be going to Dallas, and Dallas already beat them earlier in the season by a pretty large number of points. But I think, they caught fire at the right time. I don't know whether it was health or just, a bunch of things working for them. But I think they're a tough out for either team. And I'm really excited to see what happens in Detroit, because Detroit, they're kind of like a prove it team, right? Like, you had a great regular season, and now let's see, what that really means in the playoffs. They had the 3rd seed, so they do have one home game. And but the Rams are, we've been talking about this. The Rams are for real. And even when they started out the season and people did not have high hopes for them, including McVay, they played the Niners tougher than most of the teams that the Niners beat this year. So I think that the Rams are a really interesting team to follow. If they can get an upset in one of these games, that's going to be enormous. And I think it could shake up the NFC if they can actually win one. All right.
Speaking of shake up, I am rooting for the. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Let's move on.
No, I think I think we may have a little bit of a delay with us, so it'll probably catch up here. But okay, so let's talk about where we go from here. Niners lose 21-20. The Rams get a 2-point conversion late. I was thankful for that because I did not want to see overtime. And Darnold is trying to come back, and there's a drop pass, and then he's running around for his life, and he fumbles at the end. So that it wasn't meant to be, and doesn't really matter either because the game didn't mean anything. But if we look at the playoff picture, so for the Niners, if you're if you're watching for this, you want to keep an eye on Eagles, Bucks, Rams, Lions, because I don't think the Packers Cowboys game affects them. I'm actually trying to read how this bracket reads. So they take the wild card lowest seed. So I guess if the Packers do win, they come into San Francisco. But if we assume the Cowboys are winning, then it would be the lowest seed out of Eagles, Bucks, and Rams, Lions, who the Niners get. So, Rams are 6th seed. Packers are 7th seed. I think the Packers are probably the weakest, though Bucks and Eagles also looked terrible. But, if the Rams win and the Packers win, the Rams would come into San Francisco. So that's very interesting. What do you like in the perfect scenario? What would you want to see happen?
I really, 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 really is there okay, I'm trying to pull up my bracket. Is there an option of Philly coming here?
So Philly would come here. Okay, so they would have to win, and the Lions would have to win, and the Cowboys would have to win, and then I think we get Philly.
Yeah, they're broke. They're broken.
And look, the Bucks would come here as well if this thing went chalk.
Yeah, they're not very good either.
No.
I mean, it's a nice story that somebody had to win that division. And it's funny how my mind works is that everybody shits on Baker, so then I find myself kind of
for him a little bit, yeah.
So it was good to see him have a little bit of success this whole season, because I was one of the ones who definitely thought they were going to be a 3-win team. So the fact that they were able to even be in position to win a trash division, still, I mean, it's one hell of an accomplishment, I think, for them. But they're another team that I don't have any fear of. I get any given Sunday, but if we're healthy and we're not turning the ball over, they'd have a hard time beating us. And I feel the same way about the Eagles. And then it gets kind of tricky with the Rams, because I just, the way Stafford and Nakua and Cup and Kyron Williams, the way their offense is going, they are a threat. They are a threat. And it always gets kind of weird with rivals and whatnot, as we saw 2 years ago. I mean, so that is a concern. But for us, I just think that and then again, I had mentioned Detroit and their run game, but their defense is oof. So I think that game could end up being a shootout that we could definitely win. I think Brock carves up that Detroit secondary. So yeah, I just I oddly, Bill Simmons floated this idea that and now I know exactly why my picture looks the way it is. I didn't turn my light on. Anyway, I just noticed that. Sorry. I was wondering, but yeah, Bill Simmons floated this scenario of, if the Cowboys flame out, Jerry Jones bringing in Belichick. And if you hate the Cowboys the way I hate the Cowboys, that would be the worst possible scenario. Is Belichick just coaching the team, and I know 49er fans are low to admit it, but they are loaded. They're a good football team, and they could be a Belichick away
Yeah.
from being a real problem. So I want them to make it all the way as far as they can until we beat them and have a good postseason, and they can just keep Mike McCarthy right where he is.
Keep him.
That's where
Yeah.
I
We
want
want
them. Is
him.
I want Mike McCarthy as their coach, because as long as he's their coach, I don't really have much concern about them beating us. And I'm confident in our team, but you know, you got to respect Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want him in the NFC at all. So yeah,
You
go ahead,
know,
Dallas. Go
the
Dallas.
the thing with, I think it was last week or the week before, or it was very recent, but did you know that Jimmy Johnson was not even in
Mm-hmm.
the ring? That was
They
ridiculous.
hate each other.
My
J-
goodness.
Jerry, still is pissed that Jimmy gets so much credit for the success they had. And that's what this whole last 20 years has really been about, is Jerry trying to prove that he can do it without, Jimmy, which I mean is just so, but those dudes and their egos, I mean, that's, part of how they get where they are, is that outsized ego. And sometimes it, especially in these situations as owners, is what is their downfall. If any of you have been following that whole Panthers situation, um the hubris of David Tepper is just unbelievable. Well, I guess it's not unbelievable, but it's really, I mean, if you can buy a team for $2 billion cash, I guess you feel like you're the one to fix it. And I mean, everything he's done to this point has been just the opposite of fixing. They're like the worst team in the league, I think. So yeah, that's it's interesting.
The number 2 pick just made the playoffs. They won the division. Can you believe that?
Wow. Wow. Shout out to D'Amico. And
Hell yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Good. I mean, I'm happy for him. I mean, you would talk about being ahead of schedule, to be a division winner already. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And again, they've got, more picks, and yeah, so they are definitely a team on the rise. So good for him.
That poor running back who dropped that 4th down
Oh,
pass for the Colts.
that's crazy. There was some really good games yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a gut punch.
Yeah, the Cowboys, that Ring of Honor or whatever they call it. I was just thinking about it because I guess Troy was really the connective tissue in a lot of that, and getting those guys back and getting Jimmy there. And it made me wonder, like, whatever happened to Barry Switzer?
I know, right?
We got a job to do, and we're gonna do it, baby. Barry Switzer. I mean, because shouldn't that have been for Jerry Jones enough? Is like, okay, Jimmy left, and Barry got us one more. Like, that should be
Barry
enough,
Switzer.
right?
Oh, I
Barry
love it.
Switzer got him a title.
Yes. I love that quote. When you pulled that out your ass, that was great. I hadn't
See,
thought about that
the
in
thing is my best friend is a Cowboys fan, so you can imagine those wars in the 90s. It was just me
Mhm.
against him, just like, but we were pitted against each other, but we still had fun with a lot of that stuff. And,
Mhm.
we'd make fun of each other's players and stuff, but like, we both just dug the Barry Switzer's quote. It was just,
Yeah.
we just loved
That's
the
awesome.
cartoon character of Barry Switzer.
Yeah, I miss those guys.
Yeah,
These guys are so vanilla now. That's why, I'm in agreement with Bill Simmons, is that and I've heard of several other people say that the NFL definitely needs Harbaugh back, because
absolutely.
he is a throwback to the old school weird ass
Are they going to win
head coaches.
are they going to win the national championship
I
tomorrow?
think so. I think so. And I everybody says he's coming back. I just think I think he'd be crazy to leave that spot there. And I think Michigan backs up the truck and just keeps, I can't remember who said that, but I think they do that. They just keep driving Brinks trucks to his front door until he stops. Oh, that's not enough. They send another one tomorrow, and then they send another one tomorrow, and you just make the money so ridiculous that he can't leave, because we all know Jim Harbaugh. We know better than most that he's got a short shelf life. He's
5 years.
not,
Yeah, he's got
yeah,
5 years.
he's not gonna. And I think where college is different is that in that 5 years, they can just get rid of the administration and just bring in new administration every 5 years. Then you're not going to fire the owner every 5 years. So in the NFL, so again, I just think that everywhere that Harbaugh is linked is just going to be a disaster. I think him with the Spanos is a ticking time bomb, and him and Tepper just seems like that is just bound. Somebody's gonna get killed, I would think. There. But yeah.
And poor Mark Davis is like, dude, this is all the money that I have. I don't have any more money.
Mark Davis is the monopoly man with his pockets out. But I think Antonio Pierce has earned that job. They need to just go on ahead and ride that out for as long as it goes. And guy, because like you say, he can't really afford
Yeah.
a top notch coach. So yeah, it's gonna be the Black Monday is gonna be interesting tomorrow. I see they already capped Arthur Smith.
Arthur Smith today.
Yeah, so and rightfully so. That team has a lot more talent than, and they ought to fire Arthur Blank for not, because can you imagine? Can you imagine? Because again, I probably, if they offer him if they offer Lamar, Baltimore probably matches.
Yeah.
But can you imagine Lamar with Bijan and Drake London and Kyle? I mean, you don't need a league MVP. Okay. I mean, that's just, that's the Falcons falconing. So
That
yeah.
whole thing was so ridiculous. When he
Yeah.
was available, and like you say, he's probably not really available.
Right.
You're just forcing Baltimore's hand at that point, and they're like, okay, we have to do it. But man, that guy is so special. And I think some teams are just not on it because it's like, well, he's not going to stay in the pocket, and this is how we've seen Tom Brady win all these. It's like, you can win in different ways. Like, he's an absolute winner, and it's just so stupid. The NFL is just so backwards sometimes. But yeah. So I would love to see. I probably want to see. I think I'm with you. I want to see the Bucks, and in order to see the Bucks, then Dallas and Detroit have to win, and the Bucks have to beat the Eagles. I think that is maybe the biggest layup out there. The only reason I don't say the Eagles, and look, Jalen Hurts, like, his finger was all mangled today as well, and he's probably going to be wearing a brace on his right hand, and so probably still has an issue with his shoulder, and so that dude just beat up. And their whole thing, like the end of their regular season was awful. But if they have anything in them still, there's this theory, you brought up Bill Simmons, this nobody believes in us theory that can rally a team. And we know that they have talent, but for whatever reason, the end of their season has been terrible. So they still scare me more than the Bucks.
Yeah, they're definitely more talented than the Bucks. And that talent is what scares you, is that if somehow they figure out how to get it together, they are a formidable team. But I'm just at a place where we've been waiting on them to flip the switch for the last 6 weeks, and they've lost 5 out of 6. So I when I see something like that, it just tells me that there's internally there's something we don't know that we'll find out afterwards when people start getting moved, and they start, changing out personnel or coaches. And I think one of those things is that Matt Patricia as defensive coordinator has been a train wreck,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't understand why it hasn't been. Bill Simmons was saying that he can't think of a defensive assistant that's had a worse 5 years than Matt Patricia. Yeah, it's just he just apparent, and he's one of those guys. Who is that? The guy he coached for us for a while. He was he was a Cleveland head coach for a while. Eric Mangini.
Mm-hmm.
Mangenius. He's
Yeah.
one of those, another one of those Belichick guys that apparently Patricia is like super, super smart. He's like mental smart. But I don't know, for whatever reason, um, he just is not. So I don't doubt that he knows the game, but he has a hard time getting these dudes to execute. And I mean, that whole last year where he's the offensive coordinator in New England was a train wreck. So I mean, he's had 2 straight years on both sides of the ball that were just awful. And then you go back to his tenure as the head coach in Detroit. I mean, it's I don't know. That dude, maybe he just needs to be a position coach.
Yeah.
And let's leave it. Let's just leave it at that. An analyst.
Or if you go back to our UFL idea,
There you go.
you run him through UFL, and he's got to win the title in the UFL, and then he can come back and be a head coach in the NFL. So on the other side, there's some interesting matchups there too. The Dolphins and the Chiefs. They play on, I believe they play on, is it Saturday? They may play on Saturday night. It's a Peacock only game. Yep. You have to have the service, the Peacock service, and then you can watch the game. That's an interesting one because Peacock only has 30 million subscribers. So you're talking about, you're cutting the possibility, because I think cable right now is probably like at 65 million households. When you and I were younger, it was like over 100, I think. And so that's
it's going to be, they're at 30 right now. It's going to be interesting to see where they're at come Saturday.
How many people do they? How powerful is the NFL for the playoff? How many subscribers are they going to add in 6 days or whatever? That would be an interesting number to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But so who wants to face Baltimore? Geez, Baltimore just seems like head and shoulders above everybody else. The Bills are hot, but it's not like they are completely taking care of business. They're skating in some of these games too. The Texans, we saw what they did against the Colts. Dolphins and Chiefs, I think that's probably the top matchup. Maybe like even, you say, maybe in all the playoffs, it's that top matchup.
I was rooting, I was rooting for Houston, but like you say, if my man catches that ball, we have a whole different outcome. I mean, they lose that game if that running back holds onto the ball. So I mean, they won, but it wasn't like it was like like they curb stomped them. It was a close game, and the Colts could have easily won that game. So like you say, I think kind of like we are, because I feel the same way, and I don't think I'm being biased when I say I think the Niners are head and shoulders above everybody. I don't really mean the Cowboys come in here. I'm not sweating them at all.
You know what it would take? It would take the funk that they had against Minnesota. Because I still think, the Cleveland game was bad, but they still were a field goal away.
Yeah.
Right? Moody missed a field goal. They got beat up by the Ravens. That I can't even say that's the worst game they played, because the Ravens are just
they were good,
great team. But some of those games that they like, the Minnesota one is the one where I was like, okay, for whatever reason, they're just in an absolute funk in this game, and they cannot get through whatever they're trying to do. That I think it would take a Minnesota-like game for them to lose to the Eagles or to the Bucks. The Cowboys, like you said, have a lot of talent, and so the Cowboys I think the Cowboys, if they played an A+ game and the Niners were in a funk, I think the Cowboys would win the game. but B plus to B plus or A minus to A minus or A plus to A plus. The Niners win that game, and maybe by 10 points. So
Cowboys are just such a good team, such a different team. You want to talk about the tale of two teams? They are so different. Home versus road.
Yeah.
So again, that's what I'm banking on, is that when they come here, that we put it on them and we send them home. But yeah, like you say, I don't think the Cowboys or the Lions, I think we could easily, like you said, if we show up like we did against Minnesota, I think both of those teams can beat us.
Yeah.
I don't, and again, like you had mentioned about the Eagles, if they do flip a switch, they are formidable. But like the Bucks, not really.
If the Niners play good football, I think the only team that can still beat them is the Ravens, as proven. Now, in maybe last year's version of the Chiefs, I would have said the same thing. I'm not quite sure about this year's version of the Chiefs. The Dolphins would be fun because all you got to do is turn the ball over twice and they could have 3 touchdowns and you're down 21-0. That's the scary thing about the Dolphins. But
I just think their defense is so beat up at this point that I think we could I think the game plan versus them would just be to run it down their throat, and I don't think at this point they could stop us. But yeah, like you say, if you the fear with the Dolphins is that they get out here and they get to the Super Bowl and they get up on us early, and then they're able to be multiple and run Etienne and Mostert at us, and then still have the threat with the passing game. Like you said, their offense is very scary. Yeah, but as a full team, I think that they have a problem. And I'm still not. I've watched a lot of the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes still scares me. I think that dude can get on a heater and beat anybody in the world. So
he's so smart too. He's so smart at setting up defensive backs. He's so smart at knowing when he's going to be able to draw defensive pass interference on long throws. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's like the best guy to pick up that first down by an inch when he needs it. And so those are the things that scare me, because those are the things that tap into sometimes the 49ers defense just being a little bit overly aggressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that's why I said last year I think that team would have been real problems, but their wide receivers kind of look a little bit like the third string Niners wide receivers.
I'm
today.
telling you, my goodness, they're awful. But yeah, in 60 minutes, it's one of those things where that guy is really he is scary. So yeah, but like you said, I think Baltimore is clearly the class over there. So yeah, it's gonna be see. For our purposes, them getting knocked off would be awesome.
But I think out of the lower seeds, we're talking Packers, Rammies, and I guess Packers and Rammies would be the 2 lowest seeds. I think the Rams are a really tough out, and if the Rams came into San Francisco, I think I'd feel a little bit worse than probably the national media would about that game. So
yeah,
we just know each other very well.
They would be a live dog. We've seen it. I mean, like I say, 2 years ago, we've seen it. We've seen us be the better team.
Shanahan was trolling McVay something fierce with that Puka record today, though. I was talking to Brad, and I was like, just throw a wide receiver screen and get it out of the way, because they were like they were going to take as many pass interference or defensive holding penalties as possible for him to not catch the football all the way into the beginning of the third quarter. So I haven't even talked to you about this, but I was thinking about schedule wise for us. Niners don't play next week, obviously. So I was thinking maybe we take next weekend off, and then the following week we maybe do a preview, and we can recap some of the playoff games. So whether that's a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday or whatever, and then because we don't even know when the Niners are going to play,
Right.
and then we'll come back. So we'll have like 2 shows that week rather than just one show. I think that would work out pretty
great
good
to me.
All
Sounds
right.
great to me.
Any last thoughts? I mean, if we were to do an MVP, I don't know who you would give it to. You talked about Beal. I thought Darnold played really well.
Yeah, he really did. When the circumstances were in his favor, he did well. And then in the second half, it was just basically a jailbreak. And I mean that I don't fault him for that. It was just it got to the point where he could not make up for what was around him. So he would be, he would be a candidate. Eli Mitchell would be. I wouldn't have, a terrible problem with that.
Though, I did think that I was like, if JP got more carries in that second half, I think
he looked good.
He might have broke one.
Yeah, he looked really strong. And again, you have to factor in who he was playing against, but still, that doesn't take away from the fact that he looked really, really good. Again, I don't know how much run he's gonna get moving forward, but he looked good. He looked really good. So.
And you got to shout out Taylor Hawkins for his interception.
Yeah,
and then he got a pass interference on later in the game that helped the Rams out a little bit. But you're at that point, you're talking about they were down to the bench guys at that point. So
Oliver led the team in tackles, but then he got stiff armed into another dimension at one point. So yeah, that dude can't catch a break.
Yeah, he and Flanagan Fowles had 10 tackles, though Oliver's all 10 were solo tackles. So that's a pretty great stat for a defensive back. All right. That'll be it from here. So we are done with the regular season, heading into the playoffs. Rod and I will not be back for next weekend's playoffs, but we'll be back at some point, probably towards the end of the next week before the Niners game. We'll do a little preview, and then we can kind of talk about some of the playoff games as they happened and set the whole weekend up. Because look, this might be, I don't know what people would consider to be their favorite football weekend of the year. Some may say opening weekend because it's just been away from it for so long. But they put this thing together for a reason. Like, you have, so many quality teams playing on this one weekend, and it's all win or die, and it's all, just so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. Some of these 7th seeds and 6 seeds, may not be the best teams, but you're going to have some quality football this weekend. So I think this is the best weekend of the year for football.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the playoffs this year.
I'm with you. And so we'll be back. So for Rod, Double G, we'll see you when we see you. Peace out.